Great to have you with us, Jason. Now, you have written a column for Maxim Institute. What makes Kiwis Kiwi? Why did you write it?
Well, there was a big story going around in the last couple of weeks about the first New Zealand woman to reach a Wimbledon semi-final in a little while.
Oh, Lulu Sun.
That's right.
Yeah.
But then there was some question around, like, she was born here, she moved away at the age of 4, she played for Switzerland for most of her career. Tennis New Zealand recently courted her back to play under her birth nation's flag.
Why are you making that face?
Well, because it's I find it interesting that when someone gains fame on the world stage, New Zealand seems to come knocking.
Suddenly they become a New Zealander.
New Zealand, they're a Kiwi. Russell Crowe, as soon as he was nominated for that Academy Award. Kiwi actor Russell Crowe, even though, again, he was born here but moved away at the age of 4.
Then came back.
Yeah, backwards and forwards across. But if you ask him, he's like, oh, well, I cheer for the All Blacks, but then I cheer for the Kangaroos in the league, and I support New Zealand in the rugby, but Australia in the cricket or whatever. And he has lived there most of his life. Other people,
Rosé from
Blackpink, yeah, which
my
you
favorite,
and I know,
my favorite
K-pop band, yeah. Born here, lived here for maybe 7 to 10 years, then Melbourne, then Korea. So
it really, are you a New Zealander? Are you suggesting that we might be a little bit insecure?
Maybe a little bit, yeah. I don't know if it helps that we keep claiming people who live in Australia. It's just confusing, Are they New Zealand? Are they Australia? We want to differentiate ourselves. I think there is this sense that, we're a small country. We want to punch above our weight. We want to make an impact on the world stage.
So we're like the younger brother or sister, so to speak.
Yeah, I have 2 kids, you have 4 boys, and the youngest one's always trying to, rack up the older ones. I mean, I'm an older brother. I remember my younger siblings doing the same thing. So that's kind of what was behind this kind of exploration of what it means to be Kiwi.
And it's a question too about where does identity come from? What do other countries say about this?
Yeah, it's interesting. Pew Research did a study on how important is the place of birth to your national identity. And it was kind of you look at the graph, it was kind of evenly split between the countries they surveyed. But like Sweden, 80% of people said it's not important at all. But Brazil, 82% of people said it's totally important. Poland, like 80% again. Australia, places like the Western allies like ours, Australia, Canada, the UK, it wasn't particularly important.
Okay.
In the States, it was 50-50. So
that's interesting, because I would think, because the way you're inclining there with those countries, they've got high immigration rates, etc. But of course, the United States is founded on immigration, so 50-50, that's quite curious.
It was, yeah. I didn't manage to find out why that was, but it surprised me too. They're pretty much even split. Yeah.
So where do you land on this? Do you think it's where we're born or where we're going to? What's the...
I probably would land more on the side of it's actually about the culture that you embody rather than a place that you're born or
but
even
where
a place
do you get that
live.
culture from, Jason?
Yeah, that's a good point, Tim. You get it, you inherit that culture.
Yeah.
You get it from, I guess, the place where you predominantly live, although there are plenty of people who would be what you call 1.5 generation, so they were born somewhere else, they moved here, but they would still embody a lot of the culture of their home nation.
Yeah.
And so they would still call themselves that, even though they moved, maybe 10, 15 years old, they moved here, but they would consider themselves that. But I think for me, it's less about you being famous and you were born here and you moved away and you became famous. It's more about you were born here and you embody the cultures, or you moved here and you embody the cultural aspects, things like humility, things like...
I guess what you're saying is, what is it that constitutes identity? And, in your column, you mention a few figures who are well known in New Zealand, but also have mana outside of New Zealand. So let's talk about some of those people.
Some of
Kate
those
Shepherd,
people,
for
Kate
example.
Shepherd is one who people recognise as part of the suffrage movement here, part of New Zealand being the first country in the world to give all women the right to vote. Someone who I was quite surprised to learn was considered not only the father of nuclear physics, but the greatest scientist since Newton, Lord Ernest Rutherford. Yeah, exactly.
But wait, the greatest scientist since Newton?
Yeah. So that was crazy for me, like considering that he did all his schooling all the way through here in New Zealand. He only did his research in the UK. Novelists like Witi Ihimaera, considered one of the greatest Indigenous writers in the world. I think of other people like Richard Pearce, who many people think was the first person to achieve powered flight here before the Wright brothers.
Oh, the pre-Wright, yeah.
So there's quite a few that are not well known, but they've done things that are kind of embody that ingenuity.
Again, that's measurement on the world stage.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is there are other characteristics that are inherent in our national identity that we need to look to.
I think
to actually derive our identity from, rather than going, over there, that
person's famous.
That person's famous. That person's a beacon. We're like them. It's actually they're like us.
Exactly. So I think of Kate Shepherd. One of the founding, I guess you would say, principles or ideals of New Zealand is equality. And that's something that she embodied, right? All women should have the right to vote just like all men. We should be equal in that kind of democratic thing. So something like that. Innovation is something. So you think of Ernest Rutherford and his innovation in nuclear physics. Things like that are the things that they embody that lead the world in that sense. So I think that's more the substance of where we're trying to get to.
So what you're saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, but that identity stems from a kind of national character. So what would you define our character as?
So I would say we definitely value equality. I read one scholar who said if New Zealand erected the equivalent of the Statue of Liberty, it would be the Statue of Equality, because that's like our founding value. And you see that in the tall poppy syndrome that we have. You see that in the idea that anyone can come from anywhere in New Zealand and achieve great things. And I mean, as I mentioned, Richard Pearce earlier.
Just a quick question. How tall would the Statue of Equality actually be?
I don't know.
I don't think it would be as tall as Liberty.
No,
anyway.
not at all. Maybe it would be exactly as tall.
Exactly as tall as the average.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Just average,
I think you're right too with humility. That's the notion of, having lived in the United States, you basically, in conversation socially, particularly in New York, at soirees, you have to summarize your high points, your CV. Whereas if you do that in New Zealand, that's seen as unbelievably gauche. And there would be muttering in the room.
I've known plenty of people who come away from gatherings going, wasn't that guy just trying to one-up everyone in this room because he's saying, I know so-and-so, or when I was so-and-so, and you just go, that's classic New Zealand, right? It's just, it's all about, well, we're all the same. We call our Prime Minister by his first name, not Mr. Prime Minister or that sort of thing. So
what, in terms of people who might embody that now, do you have any in mind?
Well, there's I guess you'd call it a charity called Te Whakaora Tangata that is founded by a couple who moved here from South Africa and founded this to help disadvantaged people, and it's doing wonderful work. We have good relationship with them, and so they embody that spirit of innovation, of equality, of honesty,
and fairness.
That's
I think that's it's often been said. So America values freedom. New Zealanders value fairness. It's the equality thing as well. But everyone having a fair opportunity to do well.
Yeah, and I think that we're about to release a paper on education, and the conversation around that is everyone should get a fair go at a good education, and that's our concern, and that's a good thing, and I think that's something that is part of our national character.
And the point to that is that fairness is often produced by choice rather than compulsion. But that's a whole nother story.
That's another several podcasts, I think, for that one.
Oh, thank you very much. So give us the title, and where can people read it from?
What Makes Kiwis Kiwi, and they can read it at maxim.org.nz.
Thanks very much, Jason.
Thanks, Tim. Here's a brain teaser. Picture a pile of sand. Take away one grain. Is it still a pile? Remove another. And another. When does it stop being a pile? Known as the Socrates paradox, this head-scratcher has kept philosophers up at night for centuries. This ancient puzzle has a modern application, displaying a pressing question in our globalized world. How do we define a Kiwi? Take the case of Wimbledon semi-finalist Lulu Sun, who was recently convinced by Tennis New Zealand to play for her birth country. All this despite having moved away at the age of 4 and spending her life overseas. There are other celebrities born here who gave their formative years to other countries, including Oscar winner Russell Crowe and musician Rosé from K-pop icons Blackpink. Crowe himself says he's half Australian, half New Zealander, yet we claim these people as our own. Should we? Sentiment around the world is mixed. 80% of Swedes say that country of birth is not important for national identity, while 82% of Brazilians say that it is. What about the reverse? Individuals who grew up in other countries, who made a conscious decision to move here and become citizens. This seems more straightforward. Immigration is driving our population growth. Perhaps the very act of questioning what makes up our identity is quintessentially Kiwi. Instead of measuring influence or fame, let's consider what people have given us and the world. One doesn't exclude the other. Think of Kate Shepherd, who helped us become the first nation to give all women the right to vote, or the father of nuclear physics, Lord Ernest Rutherford, considered the greatest scientist since Newton, or novelist Witi Ihimada, regarded as one of the world's leading Indigenous writers. Instead of trying to solve our version of the Socrates paradox, let's ask, what sort of people do we want to be? Many of our closest allies don't think place of birth is vital to national identity. Why should we? Instead, let's focus on qualities that are deeper than our charming accent and idioms. Despite feeling more divided than ever, a reputable survey declares that our national character is driven by notions of equality, fairness, and honesty. Granted, these can be weaknesses. Many migrants find it difficult to integrate easily into our workplaces. But migrants often bring something unique. Take Cliffy and Indrane Reddy. They came from South Africa and started a community program called Te Whakaora Tangata Trust. Over more than 14 years in the community, Te Whakaora Tangata has worked with over 2,000 families, helping 7,000 vulnerable children. That's adding character to who we are. Just as removing grains of sand from a pile doesn't have a clear tipping point, defining Kiwi identity is about embodying the spirit of our nation. Let's seek out those people, mimic and celebrate them.